Nothing Personal starts in 30 seconds. It's just business. This is Nothing Personal.
Here you go.
Game one. That's the Nothing Personal word of the day. It is Wednesday, February 12th, 2025. It's been a while since we said game one, all the way back in October. It's already February. Game one now doesn't mean of the playoffs. Game one means of the regular season. Teams are in spring training. It's active. And yesterday we had a bunch of players and managers get you ready. The whole purpose of media early in spring training is getting messages out to a fan base that's now over football. They are absolutely knee-deep in the middle of their basketball season. If their team stinks, they've moved on. No one's happier than the Texas Rangers right now. The team that obviously has the most attention is the Dodgers. I'm not used to that. I'm really not. To me, it's always been the Yankees got the most attention. George Steinbrenner, this larger-than-life character. Even when Larry Lucchino, rest in peace, was calling the Yankees the evil empire, the Dodgers were being sold from Frank McCourt to Mark Walter, and there was some sort of change that was going on in LA, but I was never willing to fully focus on it because to me it was still all about the Yankees. But lo and behold, what's happened is the Dodgers have become the team way more so than the Yankees, way more so than the Mets, way more so than any other team that is the behemoth in baseball. They are the hunted, and it just so happens, maybe not coincidentally, although according to Jason Stark, maybe yes, coincidentally, and I happen to agree. The Dodgers are the reigning World Series champions. So naturally, when you win the World Series, there's a lot of attention, even if you're a mediocre team and you're not projected to repeat in any way, you're going to get extra media. They want to see the ring. They want to talk about the banner-raising presentation that you're going to do, what the patch looks like to celebrate your World Series. You know the huge. But when you're the Dodgers and you follow up an Ohtani offseason by getting Sasaki and re-signing Teoscar and extending Tommy Edman and signing Blake Snell, bringing Kike back, just various things they've done, hoping that you are acquired yet another pitcher in Shohei Ohtani, that he's ready to go two ways again. Who's not? So the media is there. Then they go. The way it works, let me do a side note, and I know you want me to get to Mookie Betts and what he said, but I just want to tell you that when the media comes to spring training, they have a pecking order of who they want to talk to. The PR people who work for the team, they go to the different players and they say, listen, how about today? Do you want to talk today? Maybe we'll have Betts talk today, and Freddie just talk for a minute or two, and Shohei, we're going to do him tomorrow at a specified time. You try to organize it so it's not total chaos and mayhem when there's more than one player who the media wants to talk to. And Mookie Betts clearly is a player who the media wants to hear from because the perception is the audience wants to hear from him. And Mookie Betts went right into it. And you know this is going to be the theme with the Dodgers all year. How are you going to repeat what you did last year? Because no one's done it in this century since the Yankees in 98 to 2000. That's number one. Number two, how do you feel about the economics of baseball? How do you feel about having a payroll that is $80 million more than the number two, which already is way higher than the others? And Mookie Betts went right into it. He said, we can't keep thinking about being champions again. We haven't even played game one. We have to take care of spring training. And then when game one comes, game one comes. Stop talking about the World Series. We didn't win last year because we were talking about the World Series every day. We won last year because we talked about the task at hand. Mookie Betts is the perfect vessel for a repeat champion. Every time Mookie Betts talks, people in Boston quiver. They go into the fetal position, sucking their thumb in the same way that I did when Cabrera won a Triple Crown. You can't believe that you let that go. Even if you had to, you can't believe it. The funny part is the Red Sox didn't have to. They just did it because they thought they should, needed to, / wanted to. I love what Mookie Betts and Max Muncy are doing. They are trying, maybe with the strategy given to them by Dave Roberts, maybe by Andrew Friedman, maybe by the newly hired Farhan Zaidi, who came over as the fired Giants beleaguered president of baseball ops, and now he's going to do some work with the Dodgers, of course. What a great thing. Side note, when you're a fired GM, you always want to get back into the game as quickly as you can, and you generally do it as a special assistant. Sometimes you go back to being a pro scout or an assignment scout, but you really want to get in as a special assistant to an existing president of baseball ops, and everyone calls their friends. They're friends in the game, mostly except for AJ, and you go through and you say, hey, how about you want to hire me? What's another $100,000? Because you want to keep your name relevant, so you're not trying to get paid what you got paid as a GM. So Farhan gets hired yesterday or the day before to go to the Dodgers, but not just to assist Andrew Friedman. It was said in the rumored release, and I say rumored release because I haven't seen a release. I only saw a rumored X, and that Farhan is going to do special other sports assignments for the owner, Mark Walter. Of course, the first thing that came to my head was Theo. It wasn't good enough that Theo was responsible for stuff going on the field. You got to be responsible for other assets too. Anyway, so whether it's Farhan for an extra $100,000, whatever his pay is, or Andrew or Dave, you want to get the players focused because you have to deal with what's going to happen all year long, and you want to start today. So Max Muncy comes out and just says, people are always going to find something to complain about. We're just trying to take care of our business, put ourselves in a good spot to make the postseason. And he then was a little self-deprecating about his roster, and he was doing that because he knows that MLB hasn't had a repeat champion since 2000. He knows that they're favored to win 169 games. These players aren't stupid. They understand the position they're in, and the problem when you are that big a favorite, you have nowhere to go but down. And any time in any season when you win 100 games, as you've heard me say before yesterday about the misery of losing, you win 100 games, you've lost 62. You've had a great year. So the Dodgers are going to have to deal with 62 moments in their year when they are going to be questioned. Are you good enough to repeat? Are you playing up to what your payroll is? Because they certainly can't outperform it. And the Dodgers don't do any favors to themselves. They re-signed Clayton Kershaw yesterday. That's what's rumored. I enjoyed that. Clayton Kershaw has a special deal with the Dodgers. Clayton Kershaw is a Hall of Famer. When I had a chance to get a nameplate from the 2017 World Series, because President has privilege, the nameplate that interested me to keep and remember the honor of having this person in our ballpark as an all-star, Clayton Kershaw. Don't forget what he's done over the course of a 17-season career with the Dodgers, but the reality is he's not Clayton Kershaw anymore. He's not even a number 5 starter. The Dodgers obviously have tremendous depth in their rotation. Clayton Kershaw is not even a luxury, and people are acting as though, what a big signing, what another example. Lifetime Dodger. This is merely a permanent thank you for what you've meant to our organization, that we will Haslam you. That's what Kershaw really is. He is Udonis Haslam with stirrups. And I don't begrudge, other than the roster spot taken away from a younger person who'd have a chance to make the team, other than wasting money when you know you're not going to get a return on that money, because if you're the Dodgers, you could simply say to him, it's time for you to get kicked upstairs. Come join our front office. We'll have you work with Farhan. We'll have you do other matters with Mark Walter. You can come to spring training every home game. Do whatever you want. But I don't want to keep putting you in a position where you keep getting hurt. We keep paying for you to get hurt. It makes no sense. I mean, he's 37 years old. Now, I totally understand that he's only 32 strikeouts away from getting 3,000. I do. 10 All-Star teams, 3 Cy Young Awards. He won an MVP, for crying out loud. I get it. But his one-year deals, total overpays. But he's back. Do you remember the World Series last year? We get into these habits where we only remember the winners and forget the losers. I have a feeling that the 8.2% of you, that's way an exaggeration, but I liked the sound of that number, from New York, know very well that the Yankees lost to the Dodgers. Are you still having nightmares? I need to talk to my friend, Mr. Turturro, and see whether there are still nightmares from that 5th inning. Aaron Judge misses a catch. Then Garrett Cole doesn't cover first base. Rizzo doesn't cover first base. And all of a sudden, bing, bang, boom, you got a 5-run inning, tie game, they lose, whatever the case. If you remember that, you remember that. I've never come to spring training as a playoff loser. Only went to spring training as a champion. And every other time I went to spring training, it was as, oh, this is our year. We're going to make a push for the playoffs. When you go, because I've had the conversations with those who have, you've won the pennant but lost the World Series. The question comes, what do you need to do better in order to take that next step? Which, of course, is a silly line of questioning from anyone in the media, from any fan out there. When you win the pennant but lose the World Series, you're doing just fine. It's not that your team isn't going to change, because of course it's going to change. Like the Yankees don't have Juan Soto, but they did replace him with Devin Williams. Don't forget about Paul Goldschmidt, Max Fried, not too shabby. Aaron Boone is forced to meet the media first day. Of course, he's going to get asked about last year, last season, the World Series. How do you feel about your team going forward, your ability to finally get over the hump that the Yankees have not gotten over since 2009? All the questions that Aaron Boone is prepared for. Here's what I was not prepared for Aaron Boone to talk about. And when Aaron Boone was being prepped for this media avail, I'm a little surprised that he was able to handle this question in the way he did, because I'm not sure they would have been able to practice this. He was asked about the Dodgers and the Dodgers' behavior after winning the World Series and the way they impugned the Yankees. Let's go ahead and listen to what Aaron Boone had to say.
A little bit. I mean, don't like hearing that. You hope, but the reality is, we didn't play our best in the series, and they won. So, they have that right to say whatever. Hopefully we're in that position next year and handle things with a little more class. But that the reality is, it's a great team, it's a great organization with a lot of great people that I happen to know and respect too. So a few people sounding off isn't necessarily how I would want to draw it up, but they're the champs, they have that right.
Do we have some early chalkboard material? Some bulletin board material? He's talking about Chris Taylor and Joe Kelly, who went on podcasts after the championship, after the Dodgers won, and said a bunch of stuff. That's all. They were just talking a little smack. They were talking about the fact that the Yankees and how they're just not good enough and they played terribly and all stuff that you all know if you're a Yankee fan. Not the end of the world. Barely worth mentioning. Because what we're prepping Aaron Boone to talk about is, how do you move on from Juan Soto? How is your team better? What is your view? What's the feeling in the clubhouse when you've spoken to players who are still here, knowing that they got Juan and they went to the pennant and the World Series and now he's gone? Are you happy he's gone? I totally understand why Boone wants to get it out there that the Dodgers are fine. I was disappointed. We'll win. We'll be nicer. Has he looked in his clubhouse? I can name about 2 players, maybe more, just 2 off the top of my head, that if the Yankees had beaten the Dodgers, you can bet your sweet Bippy they wouldn't have been full of class and quiet. They would have been out there doing stuff. That's for sure. Boone was asked about Soto, of course. And this is one, the minute Soto signs with the Mets, my PR people have gotten a statement ready for the manager. We're going to talk to our players about talking points that we could help them with. Some players don't like to be given talking points. Other players love it. But either way, you want to at least look yourself in the mirror and say you prep the players. You're prepping people in development. You're prepping your scouts who are on the road talking to other scouts. You've got your talking points about Juan Soto signing with the Crosstown Mets. And this is what they came up with. There's no running from the fact of losing a player like Juan Soto. And we all saw how important he was to our club last year. And we did a lot to try and keep him here. Boom. That's how you start. You acknowledge the truth. Can you imagine Aaron Boone taking the microphone? I don't know about you guys. I can't do it. I'd like to do Bill Beck imitating Aaron Boone, imitating Bill Beck. Riddle me that. But I'm just going to do David Sampson on a Wednesday morning, 16 minutes after the hour. Or into the show if you started like at 18 minutes after the hour. You have to admit that it stinks to lose Juan Soto. You have no choice. Can you imagine if you just had the talking point, hey, we're better for sure. I mean, listen, we reallocated that money. We shored up our pitching. We've got the bats with Goldie. We're good to go. You sound asinine. So right off the top, just saying you can't run from it. We lost a great player. We tried because Hal Steinbrenner has said to Brian Cashman to make sure that Aaron Boone and all the players know, hey, this wasn't because we didn't make an outrageous offer that would have dwarfed you, number 99. We need it out there. But then he said, I think everyone understands how much you wanted it back. That being said, there's a lot of ways to build a great team. And I think the moves that we've made this offseason give us that chance. You don't often have Aaron Boone so pitch perfect, but when you've had an entire offseason, although I don't know what day Juan Soto signed, was it December 18th? I'm making up a date, but it was a bit before Christmas. There's been plenty of time to workshop, and the Yankees workshopped. Where they didn't quite have the full workshop was on the Marcus Stroman situation. Marcus Stroman is a player who I think I have a wait to see, Coca. He should not be on the team. He is an overpay, and he cannot perform. He is not worthy of a rotation spot, even on a bad team with a bad rotation. All of that said, he still is a Yankee after they had some situations with Stroman, after Stroman said, hey, no, I'm going to come back. And Aaron Boone said, it's maybe a little bit of an awkward situation with all the noise around it, but I'm comfortable with where he is in his focus and his physical preparation coming in. Aaron is on fire. When you've got a player you can't stand, who the front office can't stand, but you don't want to sully that player too much, but you don't want to exactly compliment the player either, here's what you go to. He's focused and physically fit. He's ready. We have no problem with his preparedness because we don't want to anyway impugn him as a player who's prepping in case some miracle from Mana comes down the mountain and there's a team that wants Marcus Stroman. The workshop for me is that I wouldn't be ashamed to say, hey, when it comes to Marcus Stroman, right now, no injuries, he's not in our rotation. We've got Cole, we've got Fried, we've got Rodon, we've got Hill, we've got Schmidt. We do not expect for Stroman to get any starts. We are maybe that he'll be a long man, maybe he will not be on the team. I'm in for all of that. Why? Because we're not trying to build up his we're not trying, and the Yankees are famously good at this. Jealous I am. The Yankees spend time making sure that you believe that their prospects and their players are the best in the world. You want to know the best left fielder in the game? It's Jason Dominguez. You want to know the best third baseman in the game? It's DJ LeMahieu. Maybe Cabrera. Let's see who plays there. I think you just go straight up with Stroman and say, man, I am shocked. We had no plan for him to be here. Now, he is ready to go, but I didn't expect him to be here. There is a vesting option that he has in his contract. Players who sign vesting options, you better know that you're going to get the opportunity with the team. Otherwise, it's worth toilet paper. It's worth the price of the penny. Marcus Stroman has a vesting option for 2026 if he pitches 140 innings. Coca, listen to me now and hear me later. Marcus Stroman will not pitch 140 innings this season. He will not vest into his $18 million contract in 2026. You can book it. I think I already have an official wait to see on it, but I guarantee it. If I do, I'll double it, Coca. Put it in the document as a double down or a regular wait to see. If something happens, great. If not, I'll wear it. Marcus Stroman will not surpass 140 innings pitched. What do you think about when someone breaks a record and then comes back? Like Aaron Judge broke Maris's record for the Yankees. When you've got a record-setting year at the plate, you're 30-3 in one-run games. Don't you go into next season sort of realizing the odds are we're not going to be that lucky this year. I'm not going to be that good this year. Well, it goes the other way. The Chicago White Sox lost 121 games last year. Chris Getz, their GM, who now really must know the organization, he met the media, and he wants you guys to be clear. Crystal clear. Jack Nicholson style clear. He said, I think we're going to win more games than we did last year. Sound the alarms, baby. Turn on those machines. Sell, Mortimer, sell. When you lose 120 games, can you imagine if the talking point coming out of that season going into the next season is, listen, it is a very realistic possibility that we're going to break our own record. I can't. All right, let me do that with a straight face. Ready? 4, 8, 6, 9. For the Chicago White Sox to be worse in 2025 than they were in 2024, it would require the breaking of another record that felt unbreakable. It didn't seem possible that a team could lose 121 games, as it doesn't feel possible a team can win 121 games. The difference between winning 121 and losing 121 is very little, actually. It's my favorite horseshoe analogy. When you're at the end of the horseshoe, you're really darn close together. So to be that bad is really just as hard as being that good. And no one's ever been 121 good. So when I'm going to have Chris Getz meet the media, I'm not leading with the fact that I expect us to be better than we were last year. Really, NSS, baby. Here's what I say. Can you believe last year? I'm never even going to talk about it again. I stopped thinking about it at the end of our final game, and my sole focus has been on this season and beyond and getting this team to a point where it is competing for World Series championships year after year. That's the man that I got from our great owner, Jerry Reinsdorf, and that's the way I operate the team. Boom. Be done. Don't talk about the fact, and this all Chris Getz did all this. Don't talk about the growing pains in a rebuild and how you don't really know how good you're going to be or bad you're going to be, but you assume you're not going to lose 121. Don't call for patience of your fans. Getz did that directly. How is that not in the first media training? Do you know who doesn't have patience? The guy third in line at In-N-Out when the first two people are looking at the menu saying, what do you have here? Fans don't want patience. They don't want to be told to be patient with mediocrity or with crap. Hey, here's a synonym for please have patience. TTP. Trust the process. How's that going? Did you all trust that process with Josh up there in Philly? Chris Getz was also asked something that made me laugh. Spring training, we shared a facility with the Cardinals in Roger Dean in Jupiter, Florida. You don't see them every day because they're on the opposite side, different parking lots, different backfields. Where you see them is when you're playing them. And you end up playing in spring training your stadium partner more than other teams because it's a way to keep players in their own bed. It's a way to keep them off the bus. So you're a home game against the Cardinals several times. You're a road team against the Cardinals, but you're still at home. It is very common for teams to split facilities. The White Sox have a gorgeous spring training facility, and they share it with the Dodgers. He was asked about the Dodgers, and he said there's a lot of different ways to go about building an organization. The Dodgers have done a great job within the parameters they have. With that being said, it's a great opportunity to be matched up in a facility with a team that won the World Series, to have something to aim for. There's not one player on the White Sox, not one. And I'm not being full of hyperbole. There is not one White Sox player who is looking over to the other side of the spring training facility and saying, ooh, I wonder if I travel in their orbit, will any of that World Series juice rub off on me? Not one White Sox player. Oh, we are so lucky to share a facility with the Dodgers. Let's study them up close because then we can get to where we are. We can get to where they are. It's so funny to me that you've got a GM trying to tell you that that is possible, that there is some sort of sum greater than the parts when you are watching and looking at a great team. Does that not work all the years with the Mets and the Yankees when the Yankees were that great and the Mets are in the same city? Hey, we're just thankful to be in the same city as such greatness. Maybe that will rub off on us. What do you think? Fred Wilpon was having that conversation with George Steinbrenner? Listen, George, we'd like to compete for some of these free agents. What are your thoughts? It's the whole thing's preposterous. I'm not angry with Chris Getz. That's not the right way to say it. I think really where I am with him is that he's stuck in a position where he knows his team is bad. And I've had this with GMs, and it's really tough to do. When you've evaluated that you are rebuilding or that you just don't have the skill, the talent, you're not ready to win, whatever the case may be, you've got to send out your president of baseball ops or GM on day one of spring training, and we don't let you say it. As much as I'd like for teams to give you total honesty and transparency, we can't tell you that we're bad because we want you to maybe buy a ticket. We want you to maybe be excited. Maybe we'll win 2 of our first 3 games and we'll come to Chicago and we'll be heroes because we're the one team that outperforms. I get all that. I really do. Except they're the White Sox. All right, we come back. We've got some stuff to cover. We got a little football to talk to you about. We're not quite done. And then we're going to talk about our nothing personal pick of the day. But first, we're going to take a break. It should not surprise you that I have a list on my phone of Oscar movies I have to watch. I started making that list when the Golden Globe nominees came out, thinking that if there's crossover, great. If there's not crossover, I'll have watched a bunch of great movies. One of the movies that I needed to see after the Golden Globe nominations came out, but now I really don't have to see it, is a movie which I just did see called Queer. Queer is a movie that Daniel Craig stars in. James frickin' Bond, erstwhile, the man's man. He plays this sort of slimy, weird writer down in Mexico trying to pick up younger men and trying to gain a connection with anybody, but it has to be a male. And it's a movie. Yes, he is queer. They talk about him being queer. There's a relationship he gets in this movie that is interesting to say the least. There are some scenes that you're going to say to yourself, God, do I wish I had been at least half-baked. When you watch the jungle scene in Queer with the snake, I want you to get back to me and tell me what your feelings were, what you sort of wish you were doing at that particular moment. Queer is available, video on demand. It's available. I watched it on either Prime or Apple. It's available on both. The performance by Daniel Craig is so interesting. I get why he was nominated for Best Actor in the Golden Globe, because it's so against his... I mean, he's been in some phenomenal movies, actually, early in his career where he didn't play James Bond. But this one was just a tour de force of acting. One of the complaints that I had about it is that I couldn't stop picturing Eva Green. Do you think people will get that, Coca? Is there any chance? Raise your hand if you were counted as having watched the Super Bowl. Anybody? I was not. I don't believe anyone knocked on my door and said, are you watching it? All right, there's one. Somehow, the NFL made an announcement that the Super Bowl on Fox this past Sunday is the record for a single event in U.S. television history. 127.7 million people watched the Super Bowl. That sounds insane, doesn't it? Last year, it was about 123.7, so it's gone up. I told you in a way to see that the World Series viewership would not go down. Got that way to see right, Coco. Where's that in the document? The thing about these numbers is they're being counted differently than they ever have in the past. They're counting streaming service views. This game was on Tubi. Tubi apparently averaged about 13.5 million people, which is just staggering, by the way. Absolutely staggering. There was a total digital audience of about 14.5 million, which is greater than any digital audience. I have not yet figured out how you match who's doing what, when, and where. But I do know the takeaway from the Super Bowl record of viewers is, you typewriter and you Kodak people, you better swallow hard, because streaming, not only is it here to stay, it's going to take over no matter what Fox says. And Lachlan Murdoch talks about how important the cable bundle still is to him and his underlying business, OVS. It's done. A Super Bowl on a streaming network is a guarantee in my lifetime in the next 12 years. Super Bowl, playoffs, regular season, putting your rights together, a national package. Is this sounding familiar? It's what baseball wants to do. It's what football already does. The thing is that the reason they can announce a record like this is because they're counting way more ways than people purportedly were watching the game than they were allowed to count in previous years when the numbers were less. They also get to do a press release which says, what a terrible game, and we kept our audience. The narrative for the advertisers there is chef's kiss. Don't worry about your fourth quarter ad. If it's a close game, 1-0 you. If it's a blowout, don't you worry. No refunds coming. We will have great retention. And they said they did. For crying out loud, Meatloaf, their pregame show on Fox did 23.4 million people. Coco, when's the last World Series game that had 23.4 million viewers? I'm sure we could find that in time for Sporting Class, maybe in time for Live Levitard here in about 66 minutes. Maybe That's if you're watching live at 8:34 in the East. If you're on the DK network, then Le Batard's coming at you in 26 minutes. Hashtag lead in. We're counting the Spanish language coverage now. We're counting bars, restaurants. We're extrapolating. We're doing the David Sampson method. 1 car equals 6.9 people. We're doing it all. We're going out to find the rural people who have never been counted before, and we're going to go farmhouse to farmhouse. We're going to go property to property. Rotted wooden fences be damned. Beware of dog signs with guns, absolute. And we're going to find people, and we're going to count them. And then we're going to take that number and make it bigger. Bigger. It's pretty good, isn't it? Do you think that the Super Bowl will just keep going up every single year and they'll reallocate regular people, regular watchers of the, local Fox or CBS or NBC, and the focus will be way more on the streaming numbers because they need to show Wall Street that the streaming numbers are increasing, subs are increasing, revenue is going to increase. There's going to be a break even soon. Hi, my name is not Netflix. I'm telling you it's going to happen. I think it all makes perfect sense to me. Do you think the NFL is despondent or happy that the halftime show drew more people than the game? 133.5 million people were watching the Kendrick Lamar half. It's the highest such figure ever in the Super Bowl. Ever. You can't argue with results. Even if the results are made up, you can't argue with them because we have no way to prove it. What did I say? Talk to me, Coca. Get in my ear. What did I say that was wrong? I don't want to be wrong. Which part? The fact that Kendrick Lamar had 133.5 million people? So what Coca wants me to point out is there were 137 million people at one point in the second quarter. And therefore, the view is that there were 4 to 5 million people who actually turned their TV off before the Lamar halftime or during the Lamar halftime. The reason I didn't say that, Coca, is I don't believe that. It's not that they turned it off because it was Kendrick Lamar. I think if you go to every single halftime show, it will be down off the peak. And what people are trying to get to is a narrative that Lamar was bad for the game, or that it didn't interest me, or that it's only one demographic and not 5 demographics. Are we going to be sued? Are we not going to be sued? And the reality is Fox released numbers that show, like it or not, the numbers for Kendrick Lamar were incredible. Absolutely jaw-dropping. And you can't take that away from him. Not that you were trying to, Coca. I do still believe that more people watched halftime at 133.5 than what the average was for the game. There was a point in the game, Coca, where there were more people at 137.7. Well, let's go minute by minute in the halftime show. Maybe like toward the end when people were coming back for the third quarter, maybe that peaked. Maybe when Serena Williams was dabbing. I've just used that word totally incorrectly, which just means I'm old and white. But that, I don't know if that's what that was. There was some sort of dance she was doing that apparently was a diss against Drake, who they dated, which I didn't remember. God, do I feel culturally irrelevant. Damn People magazine. I don't recognize anybody anymore. The only thing that is more certain than a Super Bowl parade, which is going to happen apparently before 1 million people in Philadelphia on Valentine's Day, which happens to be Friday. Hey, honey, I've got the best plan. Yes, we'll eventually get to Little Caesars, but first, let's go to a parade together. We will freeze our kishkas off, but we're going to celebrate these players and this victory with confetti and ticker tape. And then I'm going to buy you chocolate and we'll have dinner. The only thing more sure than a Super Bowl parade are players and executives who don't win the Super Bowl or who don't win your championship, who don't win your World Series, who then give you reasons why that in their head rationalize their mediocrity. They try to bolster the case of their team. Dak Prescott, man, you are learning from Jerry Jones. Dak Prescott got paid last offseason, as you recall. Dak Prescott is hurt, as you recall. He had surgery. He's trying to come back. Dak Prescott spoke at an event. He was at a gala, and he wants you all to know They're close. I mean, razor thin close. Like you can't shine a flashlight through the spot. That's how close they are, because they beat the Eagles. They beat the Commanders during the regular season. So his view is the transitive property of I beat them, they are the champion, therefore we're the champion. Does anyone else agree with that? Is there a chance? You can't possibly agree with that fact. You don't take the fact that you won a particular game. The Dodgers are going to lose 60 games? Do you think when the White Sox beat the Dodgers in a spring, this is the equivalent? Hey, the White Sox won a spring training game with their new manager and they beat the Dodgers. Wow. Looks like the Dodgers could be in trouble. It's so good. Don't you worry, Dak. I totally agree with you. You're so close. He said when he watched the NFC Championship game and the two teams, he said, I feel confident that we've gotten the better part each and every time. But just seeing such a dominating fashion in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, credit to them, but it's our turn. It's on us. He kept talking about checking records and how close they are. I put the quote up on the screen, Dak Prescott on the Eagles, trying to get you to believe something. Here's the thing about everyone else who watched the game. The Eagles were so far superior to the Chiefs and really so far superior to every other team. I got a stat for you off the top of my head. So 50-50, I have it wrong. The Eagles won by by 18 or more points in both the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl, becoming the first team to ever have such dominating back-to-back performances. I think that's right. But either way, they are dominant. Dak Prescott trying to channel that sort of dominance. Don't forget, the Cowboys have not even been to an NFC Championship game since 1995. Forget the Super Bowl. They can't get to the title game. And where was he when the Eagles were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago? Did he say, oh, we're not that close? Or did the Cowboys not beat the Eagles 2 years ago? And therefore he couldn't say, oh, transitive property, we're good. I think it's so important to say to your players, just shut the yapper. The Eagles won the Super Bowl. If you're asked at a sporting event, at a charity event, at a private signing, at a private gala, if you're on a date with your wife or your wife's friend and you're asked about the season, you say, listen, the only thing I can control is myself. I am trying to get better, get faster, get healthier, and do whatever I have to do to help our team win more games, because clearly that's the goal. You want to win the final game of the season in February. That's all. You don't have to try to convince us of something that's not true. Nothing. Personal pick of the day. We had the Knicks -2 against the Pacers last night, and the Knicks were hot. We're back to 16-18. I don't want to say we're hot, but we're hotter than we were when we were losing games. We are only 16-18, 34 picks into the new year. We're 2 under. Ugh. Let's talk about tonight. Let's talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves. I want to talk about that because I've been thinking nonstop. I've thought about the Minnesota Timberwolves and Minnesota more now than even when I was at school in Wisconsin and Madison, and all we wanted to do was not be Minnesota. I love Minnesota. I love the people in Minnesota. It is the land of 10,000 amazing lakes. I've never counted, but it sort of feels that way. The Timberwolves have a team that were very competitive. They made a fascinating trade, trading Karl Anthony Towns. They're a team that made it all the way to the Final Four last year. And they're a team that ends up with new owners as of yesterday if Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez can get approved. I view them in the process. This did not sneak up on the NBA, the fact that the likely result of the arbitration against Glenn Taylor was going to be a win for Alex and for Mark. The NBA will go through the process. There will be a vote. And at some point, I'd say in the next 30 to 60 days, you will see a new owner in Minnesota. And that will bring with it the excitement of, wow, have we upgraded? How will that upgrading manifest itself? Have they been in control this whole time, or has it been Glenn Taylor? Where will there be a difference? Well, I know where there's one particular difference, and that will accrue to the benefit of people in Minnesota, fans of the Timberwolves. The ownership structure is such that you've got a player, a former player, who is interested in the creature comforts of his players, who's interested in putting his players in the best position to succeed, knowing what it took him to succeed. When you've got Alex Rodriguez, who is investing a ton of his own money. I read somewhere, this is a side note here, although an important note. I read somewhere about comparing Alex Rodriguez and Derek Jeter and what Derek Jeter did with the Marlins and what A-Rod's doing, because those two have been competitors for so long. Let me be as clear as I need to be, Mr. Nicholson. What Alex Rodriguez is doing in Minnesota is nothing like what Derek Jeter did in Miami. Forget the fact that Derek Jeter put up no money, and you've seen the kind of businessman A-Rod is. You've seen the investments he's made. You've seen the investment into the team is going to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars as opposed to zero with Derek Jeter. You can bet your sweet Minnesota Timberwolf that Alex Rodriguez will not be drawing a salary the way Derek Jeter did. And there will be value added to the team in a way that Derek only could subtract value. There is a misunderstanding about that, and I don't know why. While I acknowledge that Alex and Derek are competitors, and I told you yesterday, forget the fact that they sit next to each other on Fox, there is still a competition between them, but it's a blowout. How many people have had an opportunity to be the governor or be the alternate governor of an NBA team? Not many who are former players. I'm excited just to watch what happens because the misunderstanding out there, it's pretty big. Hopefully, it's a little more clear. And what should be clear to you is that if you have a team that you can build around Anthony Edwards and you have an ownership group that's dedicated to doing the things that are necessary in order to make the team have sustained winning, and they're going to say that, but do it in a smart way where they're going to do more and say less, then you got a shot. Meanwhile, Glenn Taylor, despondent, totally despondent. The T-Wolves are favored over the Bucks tonight. We're taking the T-Wolves 6.5 over the Bucks. Remember, Giannis is out. Trae Young was named to the All-Star game. Is everyone excited for the All-Star game this weekend? Does anyone give any crap? When is Adam Silver just going to get the players to just play the game? Why don't you all the current players, I'm talking to you, go watch some tape from the All-Star game during my time, 80s, 90s. These guys did it. They were actually playing. That's how you fix the All-Star game, not with 4 teams and all the stuff that they're doing this year out in San Francisco. So Giannis is hurt. Bummer. T-Wolves 6.5 over the Bucks. That's my nothing personal pick of the day. Do you think that all the little gimmicks they'll do in the All-Star game, Coca? You just told me in my ear that Kevin Hart is going to be an on-court MC. I told you I watched Along Came Polly again in the middle of the night last night. Did I tell you or did I tell the audience? Doesn't matter because I love you all equally, mostly. Kevin Hart was one of the people with Philip Seymour Hoffman who was doing Philip Seymour Hoffman's E! True Hollywood Story, except Philip Seymour Hoffman was funding it himself because E! wasn't really doing a story about him. Kevin Hart plays the sound guy. I had watched that movie 50 times, and I hadn't sort of put that together. Now he's going to MC the game. What does that mean? Look at that defensive play. Is he like replacing Mike Breen and Mark Jackson and Stan Van Gundy and Hubie Brown and Matt Gukas? Does anyone watching know how to pronounce Matt's last name? Does anyone remember him as a player? I do. I just can't remember if I got it right or wrong, which bothers me. Kevin Lockery? I could go all day, but I won't. So tomorrow we're going to start another interesting thing for you. I can't wait. Are you going to be there? 8:00 a.m. live. It's just business. We'll be back for a dose of nothing personal. Stay tuned for Dan Le Batard on the DraftKings Network and join us live on the Le Batard Show right now on YouTube. This is Nothing Personal.